Hey everybody, how are you doing today? I'm Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa. On the mic is my husband John.
Hi guys.
And together during this live streaming event, we are going to show you how you can paint homecoming for yourself. We're going to cover every step of the process. John's going to be tracking me with all the cameras, so you're going to see how to mix the colors, how to lay in every layer of the paint. Every part of it is going to be explained to you so you can create this for yourselves at home, with even some customization tips so you can make this reflect the people in your life. Now, if you check the description below, and you got to hit the more, because they only give you a couple lines, but there's like 50,000 characters, so you got to hit the more. It's going to give you a link that's going to be highlighted in blue that'll say TS, and then that's going to take you to the website where there are 2 different traceables that's going to help you be able to customize this. Also, if you check the info card, which is the floating eye, I'm not sure what it is on mobile, it's going to pull down some suggested stuff. So that'll be the 12 Days of Christmas playlist. And it will have some extra videos to cover skin tone and hair color, just in case you want to change those up too. So we are ready for you today. How you guys doing?
Very good.
I'm going to sip my coffee because if you guys had any idea what a journey it was, because like John got everything fixed. He tested everything. He went over everything. He went to take us live, and we saw a new error message we'd never seen before. It was like such an adventure.
Well, what I would say is that we're very fortunate that we've had a community that's come in to help us at just the right time, because
we needed it.
We've had 2 cameras go down on us. We had our switcher go down on us. Now we've had this is the 3rd input set we've had go out on us.
So apparently all this equipment has this like very limited shelf life in hours that you get to use it, and it's not okay anymore, and we're coming to that place. So it's great that we're going to be doing this over. But I'm excited to get started on this. I know you guys are excited to get started on this because this day is delayed. This is the last day of our event. It doesn't necessarily mean the last day of winter theme paintings, but it's just the last day of this special event. And if you got the email from us, you kind of know what this is about, like how it got created and all of that. And I'm just excited to be able to bring this to you today. So I'm going to show you the materials that we're going to use to create this fabulous bit of memory for ourselves.
All right.
Now, I have an 11 by 14 canvas board, and I did put some wishes on it. We had a wish for Danielle to have health and well-being and just to get better because she's been just feeling like really not well. And then also, very sadly, we lost one of our Sherpettes, Ruth, passed away unexpectedly in surgery. So we just want to send a lot of light and love to her family because I can't imagine that over the holidays. And then also to every family and person around the world serving to protect peace and to, protect their homes and families. We just want to say thank you to all the brave families that are part of that well-being. And then also to say, if you're waiting for somebody to come home, I hope you guys get to get reunited on the holiday. And good luck to everybody in the Army-Navy game that's happening today. Go Sports.
Go Sports.
Go Sports. I hope everybody has a really good time. So this is 11 by 14 canvas board. And I've got assorted acrylic paint. Let's put out the colors and get our background going. I have phthalo blue here. So I'm going to take a little of my phthalo blue and put it out. The background for today's painting is actually, I would call this a 1 Hoot background. It was real easy to do. Now, I'm not trying to mess with any of you guys because sometimes you guys say, if I say it's easy, then it's a big problem. But I think actually it's pretty doable. It's just one of our traditional backgrounds that we do. And even if it's a first time painting, this background is pretty doable. I'm going to grab a pretty big brush though. I'm going to grab my number 30, which is a bright. And what you're looking for is just a nice big wide brush so you're not trying to paint the background with a tiny brush. This has synthetic filaments for acrylic, so it's not going to hold too much water. It's going to hold just enough. And that's going to be that it's wet and moist on my hand. It should feel wet and moist but not sopping. So I'm going to take just a smidge with the corner of whatever brush I'm using, both corners. Come over to the white, because it doesn't take a lot of phthalo blue to tinge your white. I'm just taking it in small amounts. And when I get that nice sort of very light sky blue, I'm going to come to the center of my canvas and I'm going to just paint a smile stroke. See how my stroke looks like a smile?
Yeah.
I love that.
Now, I'm going to acknowledge what some people are seeing at home. The palette cam is kind of jumpy today. So
Is it?
if you go over and look at it, go ahead and just add a mix on there. And as you mix, you'll notice your hand kind of jumps around. Just move your hand around.
Oh, boy.
That's all that it is. So
Okay.
it's just kind of a little bit choppy over there. The rest of the cameras are just fine, but that's the camera that went out on us today.
Well, we'll try to be real careful how we're mixing, and I'll try to slow that down over here just to make sure you guys can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Because that's really the big thing, is that you just know the steps. So I'm just loading up more paint. Notice that when I load my brush, I flip it, and I drag it through and then flip. That's actually putting paint all into the bristles, and that's a lot of how I get as much traction out of my brush strokes as I do, because the brush is very loaded. So I'm just made this nice little keyhole happening here, right? You can see just sort of a little smile stroke. Now I'm going to come and get just my blue, and I work it into the white that I have, but it's more blue. I'm going to dip my brush. I've just dipped my brush in a little bit of water, because they can get dry. You don't want to soak your acrylic, but you need some type of medium or fluid to help it flow, especially heavy-bodied, across the canvas, unless you're using something like Liquitex Basics or something, and then I actually would avoid getting too much water in the mix. Because sometimes you lose your pigment. You got to hoard your pigment. Now I'm blending this into the center, right? This is 2 steps, so don't worry too much at this stage. We're not doing an underpainting, so we actually kind of work this a couple of times to get the look. So don't feel pressured. See how I'm blending it?
Yeah.
Kind of a nice blend. I'm going to come here. Again, I'm dipping my brush just in the tip of the water, and then I'm going to pull some of this out. And that's a little much, actually, right there, what came out. See how much that was? I need to drag that off. So I'm going to just keep loading and mixing, and that will prevent the underbinding, so I don't really have to worry. All right, got my darker color here. All right. So I was going for a cool but bright day. You know, like the day, like a winter day that you could be outside. You'd need a coat, and it would definitely be chilly, but you could be there for a while. I'm just loading up. I didn't need more water because I put too much out, so it was already on my palette. And I'm going to just finish this off. I flipped my canvas so as to not, you know, strain myself physically trying to get around the weird edges when the lip of the easel's there. How is the lag doing on the palette cam, Mr. Cooney?
I think it's doing okay.
All right. Well,
It's just
fine.
it's just a little jumpy. It's not too bad.
So I'm just blending this. You can blend acrylic paint while it's wet, but it doesn't blend very well into itself once it's dry. Then you have to use another blending method like glazing or dry brushing. So now I'm going to come back and sort of reinforce a little bit the center. So I'm going to make sure I don't have too much pigment on my brush. I'm going to pull some more white back in like I'm doing here. And you can see I'm loading, pull, 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 flip, pull, pull, pull. And then I'm going to just, I take this brush stroke and I do this very lightly. Now, some of my effect, I can tell you right now that I'm having that's good, is that the canvas coating today is not fighting me. Maybe it's been improved. That's been known to happen. I'm just making sure that I've got this soft, sort of romantic center of light. And then when I have that in where I like it, and it should just feel like one of those winter bright days. There's just a certain kind of color and feel that a cold, bright day gets. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to rinse that paint right out of it. Take out the extra water and put it aside where I'm going to remember to wash it. And then I'm going to sip my coffee and put in my branches, which are actually kind of a lot of fun to do, and I have a couple tips to make that easier.
Oh. Well, it's much. I'm much relieved now that everything. Now that we're, I'm so much more relieved now that we're live.
Are you?
Well, now that because it's there's you can see there's a little bit of jumpiness on that, but we're okay for the most part. I think that everyone's going to be able to see this, definitely be able to work, be able to see this get worked out here. And they're really excited to be here. I mean, oh my gosh, we've got over 400 people here who've come to see us make some paint dry.
I love that.
And, and we joke, guys, but we're really both really grateful for everyone who shows up here. You guys, it's so magical to be able to come together and celebrate painting like this. To have you together here as our art tribe is really wonderful. So thank you guys for coming and being part of it.
Oh, too much of that.
Cool.
Squeeze too hard. Squeeze too hard, Mr. Cooney.
That's okay.
So now I have my phthalo blue, my titanium white, my cad yellow medium, my phthalo green, my burnt umber, my docks purple, and my yellow ochre. I'm going to grab my number 8 cat's tongue. You could also use a round or a bright on the edge of the bristles. So you would just stroke it like on the edge here. You guys can see that? On the edge. I'm like demoing on the palette, which is the one thing that's like, oh wait.
But I get to see your eyes when you look over, so I'm naturally inclined to.
Because let me see the palette again and put the paint in the wrong place. There we go.
They look at you.
There's a picture in picture. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got it.
But they like to see you look.
Okay, so now I'm going to dip my brush in some water. I'm going to mix up my darkest color, which is going to be, and this is going to be shocking kind of to you. You've never done this before. It's going to be a little of the Diox purple, some of my burnt sienna, and then I'm going to get my green in it. And this is going to be my deep pine green. Right? This is the shadow inside my pine. I don't really use black for this part. I use it actually pretty sparingly in this particular painting and mostly use just very dark chromatic colors. I just misted my palette because this paint is coming to the end of its journey and it needs a little extra moisture. So when I'm well loaded, which you can see I am, I'm going to come to my corner. If you're very nervous about painting directly, you can always use kids chalk to make the mark ahead of time to show yourself where to go. But I'm going to come from this corner. I'm going to come down and over a little bit. I got to leave myself room for pine needles to go both directions. And I'll stop just a little bit past the halfway point. And then I also like to make myself a little downward branch. It's going to kind of come down at an angle like this. So I'm going to just bring this down, not too far, because then I can adjust it easily. If I'm not happy with where I put it, another little short one. And then let's give ourselves another long one. Once we have that, I'm going to dip my brush in water, reload to make sure I have a good load, good and dark. And then I'm going to have a really good time. I find it's actually easier to go backwards on the pine needle shape. So I actually start at the tip of my brush, my little branch bits here. And I take the brush stroke, I push it into the canvas, and I just flick it out. And see how it makes those little needle shapes? I'm going to keep it pretty delicate here at the edge. These get real fluffy. Mine got real fluffy on me real fast. But to help the other pine needles show up, there has to be a dark base. And I'm just coming back. If I go forward, I lose a lot of my pine needle tip detail. So that's why I move it back up the branch, if that makes sense to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just coming back here. And then also if you do that, then you can have pine needles that go to the center of your branch, not just to the outside. It's a good idea to vary up the needles so that they don't feel too uniform and perfect. But even if they get to be like little puffy raccoon tails, don't feel bad about it. It will still work. So this is one that you can be real easy with yourself about. By the way, you can just also use this technique and make a bunch of ornaments hanging. So I'm just remixing up on my brush, reloading, and just coming back here and just making sure that I've got a nice bit of fir needles. And then back here, I'm going to fill this in quite a lot because this would be the thick part of the tree. Because we're really up close. So I'm just filling that in a little bit. Giving it a nice dark base. But just about right through here at this corner. Just a little bit. If you look at my hand, just about that much. Not much. coming along. So one thing as we're going, what I want you guys to be thinking about is how you're going to get your circle in. I have a 6.5 inch dessert plate that I use. You could use the lid to a nut can, like one of the big nut cans. You could use any round object that's about 6.5 to 7 inches round. Now this particular branch is likely to be kind of behind our, I'm going to take these little ones out just a little bit because I want room for my ornament. Like you do. So you can see I'm just making some adjustments, making it more piney. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, fiddle, 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 fiddle. So here we go down here. Yeah, we're going to lose some of this to the ornament, but that's okay. Just doing the same thing. I'm just letting the brush do the work. I'm coming up backwards. I've got a nice deep dark color for everything, the brighter pine greens to like sit on top of. You know, a lot of ways to paint pine trees. You might have a different way you like to do it too. You might be doing like, you know, more of a stroke technique to do it. I just like to paint them though. Ooh, that was a nice one. Another little branch here. Loading up. So that's the big thing, is making sure that the paint is got enough moisture in it, but not too much, and that it's well loaded into the brush. Let's make a shorter little pine needle here. And I'm just, you can just see I'm just sort of flicking these brushes out. If you look, I'm not really pressing down like, let me see. Sorry to bang this. I'm not pressing hard like this when I'm flicking, right? I'm pressing real lightly, barely touching the canvas. If I were pressing hard, it would be like this. That wouldn't be fun. I have to press lightly, very lightly. Kind of think about like how hard would you want to press around your eye, right? We used to call it wet cat pressure. How lightly would you pet a wet, angry cat?
Right.
Before that, I used to say sunburns, but then there were some people who were like, I don't really relate to the sunburn analogy. Well, that's a freckled redhead.
You know a lot about sunburns.
I know a lot about them, but I could see that might not be a universal experience. Now I'm going to sit here and try not to be jealous. So I'm just pulling this little branch up into the rest of the tree. As I get up in here, I can let things get thicker, and I do press down a little bit harder, just making sure that that becomes very dense. Last branch, last chance, last branch. We'll be pretty with this one because we'll see all of this one. Oh, so just little tiny tips. You could, you know, you may find that you have an easier time with a round to get this stroke. That's okay. Not the brush, it's the artist. So I like take a stroke out to the left. You can see me flick it, and then I come through like a fan. That's just sort of how we get this little shape. Fan. Come around like a fan. Come around like a fan. I can say that again and again.
Yeah.
All right. Just making these feel very pine-like. When that's good, I'm going to rinse out and kind of dry off. So I'm getting the pigment out. It can take a minute to get a fully loaded brush clean. And then I'm going to start doing the more highlighted needles and some of the stuff that gives it more interest, but only after having a sip of coffee.
A sip of coffee. That sounds very nice. I'm going to look over and see. You know, we've got a great crew of people here that are really, really excited about this. We've got a lot of servicemen and women, and their families are here. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, we always want to give big art hugs to all the family of the servicemen and women in too, because they play a big part in supporting our troops, especially those service moms out there. So, big hugs.
And whoever's staying at home, all the people who are at home.
Yeah, just, you know, random
love into the universe.
Yep.
I'm just making sure, you know, I could get a different brush. I just want to make sure I'm starting with a fresh, clean slate so I don't have too much pigment. And I'm going to mix a slightly lighter green. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna and just my phthalo green and add a little ochre. And you're going to see this doesn't make a bright green. That's not what it's doing. But it does make that next level of pine needle green that you need. So I'm going to come along here and I'm going to just add, sure it's light, it needs to be a little lighter. So on some of this, it's like about these transitions, just making sure you have the transitions and that they have enough contrast between them, which means like that there's enough light and dark. So there's this. And now we just put a few little pine needles out. We don't try to paint out everything that we've done. Right? Just adding yellow to this. We don't paint out everything that we've done. We just add now some interest, right? There, we're adding some interest.
No, there was a good question that came up in here. And I think it was Mama4 said, how do I dilute my acrylics? They say dilute. How much water is needed? They don't tell me as a beginner.
No, they don't. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
There's going to be so much we're addressing next year because of that. We're going to be just like, we've just decided, all right, if not us, who?
Yeah.
If not us, who's going to do it? So we're going to do it all next year. But what I'll say to you is that they never tell you what you need to know as a beginner. With something like golden, I find I can get up to a 40% thinned with water mixture before I have any trouble with the paint. If you go to your paint's website, it's probably going to tell you 30%, but what I would say to you if you're using student paint is keep it to 15% and under, just a moist brush, because the binders and a lot of the products, not all of them, I'm going to someday tell you which ones do and don't, but in a lot of them fail if they have too much water. So if you're painting an economy paint, then you want to do about 15%, 20 tops, even if it says 30. If you're doing a mid-grade paint, you can get away with 30. And if you're doing a pro paint, you can get away with more just because they really pack it.
But you got to be careful.
Ingredients.
That's proceed at your own risk.
Yes. So I'm just pulling in more of my green and my yellow into this as I'm going. I'm coming back into my little tree and I'm adding some just different little, Sam, I don't want to take out all my dark color though. I want to just make little random marks, see? See? I love my Bugsy Siegel. All right, even though it's going to be under a Christmas ball, I'm going to go ahead and paint it. Because I don't know exactly where, right? I don't want to be trying to paint little fiddly bits around the ball, so it's just easier to put it in correctly. Layer my objects up. Here we go. Next layer. Next layer. A little more green and a little more yellow.
Now, while you're doing that here, I'm gonna come over and check your mic real quick.
Uh-oh, is my mic not okay?
I think
it's in the place it's supposed to be.
No, not there. I'm gonna mute you, and then I'm gonna come check the connection.
Okay.
You can take a sippy.
I will. I'm gonna just finish painting this little branch, so that we get done on time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, you got it.
Okay. I'm like, buzz. Wait, you're gonna come adjust me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we're back.
Are you guys good?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Drops are not good.
For mics, no.
Okay.
So when we have these two kind of muted colors in, then we can do little pops of highlights that really cause our branches to just take on their pine style. And that's why we have a little bit of cad. We don't use too much cad yellow, but we want a little bit so that when we mix it into our pine color, it'll be much brighter in some sense than when we mix the yellow ochre in. And we're also going to do a little bit, a smidge of white. There we go. And I'm looking for that sort of first pininess. Nicely loaded. Too much yellow. What was that? That'll happen. Sometimes I'm getting paint and I'm like, I grabbed too much. Still pretty loosely mixed though on my brush, so everything should be okay. And I'm going to just give myself just a few little pine needles here in this sort of color range. I really like this part of the tree because it's really fun to paint them like this. This will actually help you with a lot of other things you might be working on. You know, if you need to grab a little more green into it, you can, or yellow. It just, they have a lot of colors on pine, so just feel like you just don't want to get like a new grass green. Unless you're putting it at the tip, because that's the only place you really see that on a pine tree.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure it's, there we go. And a little more green in there, which is what I'm looking for. A little more green. I'm going to get wet, then come over and get a little more green. Trying to remember to slow down my load. So I'm used to working so fast. It's very hard to be thinking that we've got that new...
oh, no, it's fine.
Okay. It's fine? He says it's fine, so it's fine. He says it's fine. I'm standing like a pirate now. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add this color in. I'm just being kind of loose about it. Sometimes when I get down here, I tend to let my brush get a little dry, so I'm going to dip in the water and get into the green. All right. When I have that is my last final little highlight color, and I like things to be a little bit wet underneath. So when I come there, I'm okay. I'm going to take a little of my white. I'm going to even grab some of my yellow ochre this time. So I want that minty pine color. You guys familiar with that color?
Yeah.
So it's just this mixture over here with a little yellow ochre. It's super fun. More important than the exact color is just that it's a lighter value. See how much lighter that is?
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're doing. Just a little bit of that around. Not everywhere. Not everywhere. Just a little bit. And some here and there. A little more yellow in my green. Make sure that gets a little bit. I'm just changing up those values. Just maybe a couple there. I want it to be pretty dark up here. If you lose your dark values, you can easily get them back in by just remixing it and putting it back in. Just grabbed a little yellow. I'm just going to come down here and change it up here. Little pines. And you can just play with that until it feels like pines. You can get some of your just green and just play with that until you feel like you've got the pine tree that you remember, that you relate to. Maybe yours is spruce, maybe it's some other color. I'm just taking the green there and working it through. When you're happy with your pine, you're going to dry your canvas, and I'm going to tell you about the cool traceables that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That you're going to love, and how they're going to help you change this up for your family if need be. All right, let me dry this, and I'll meet you in a second.
Okay. So while she's doing that, what I'll say is, yes, if you check in the description below, you'll see a link that will take you to our website, that and it'll be this project's landing page. And on that, there's a direct link to get the traceables for this. And what you'll notice is we've got a couple variations there. We've got dad and daughter and mother and son, and you'll be able to get both those variations there, and you can mix and match as you'd like to help make yours. We thought that might make things a little easier, and Sin will explain more about that here when she comes back. But you can find those on the website there below, along with the link, along with a list of the materials that we use, and links back to the other projects that you can find on our webpage, on the website, which is really, it's growing. It's doing pretty good along, I think. So come on back over there, check it out. There's a whole bunch of projects and things you can also find over there to do along with those traceables. And well, there's Cinema's back. So how you doing?
Sipping my coffee.
Yep.
Misting my palette. Sipping my coffee. My palette's on my heater. That's not a good smart move. All right, so now I'm going to take out my Sero paper, and I got some new stuff. And that's really because I really enjoyed it so much, and I'm going through it. You get many, many, many uses out of a single sheet. So if you're painting the same size again and again and again, you can, you know, you can use little sheets, and they go a long, long way. I've just used so much that I decided I need to get the big roll.
Big roll, yes.
So I'm going to open this up. This is white paper. And this is going to allow me to transfer my image onto the canvas so that I'm not trying to freehand an idea I freehanded in earlier. And it also will let you, check the side, it's the inside, it'll let you transfer images. I'm just going to cut this, and you'll see this sheet for a while until it gets so many little rub-offs that we don't see that sheet anymore. Oh, good. No, low-tack tape.
There's a couple of variations of this traceable, right?
Yes, and I'm going to talk about that right now.
Cool.
So what I wanted you guys to be able to do is I realize, you know, there's just so many people, right, that serve, and I wanted you guys to be able to mix and match and make this your own. So on top of the skin tones and hair colors, you know, we have this nice traceable for the father and daughter. But I also included a traceable, of a mother and son. Now, the big thing on the mom is that you have to make sure that the bun is not touching the collar. It has to be up high. I may have even, I'm pretty close here, but it has to be up high and not touch. It's a serious regulation, but it sort of shows you how I reshaped a little bit for the boy and the mom. But you could, you know, use this because they're the exact same size. I made sure they're the same size. So you could put in the father and then come back and put in the son. You could put in the mother and then come in and put in the daughter. So, and then we have every kind of hair that you could have and every kind of everything that you could have. So hopefully what you guys are going to be able to do with this is use those tools, the videos in the iCard. And if you're not painting this exact image, paint an image of your family being reunited or a memory in your life. Mm-hmm. Okay. So once I have my paper out, I'm going to get my father-daughter traceable, and I'm going to place those on my canvas. I'm going to use tape to affix them. This is low-tack tape, which means the glue on it's not particularly sticky, and it won't pull up my painting in any way when I use it on the surface. And so I'm going to put this in so it feels like, I like to look to see it, that it'll look like the string is going into the branch. And I kind of check the placement, you know, in relationship to the other branches, where they are, how far out the branch I want it. And I think I'm going to stick that right here and towards the end of my branch. There we go. Once that's on, then I can put my Sero paper transfer side down, which is the side that's going to be rubbing little white dusters onto your fingers. And I'm going to affix that under this traceable. And I'm going to make sure it's taped somewhere so it's not shifting on me. I just did a little rub just to make sure I have the right side. Yep. Now, I like to tape down a couple other places because nothing messes with your transfer like your paper shifting. It's super annoying. I made sure that my Christmas ball was not at the end of my canvas. It's nicely placed. I don't have to worry about where it is. And now all I have to do is take either, you could use a burnishing tool like this right here, or you can use a pencil or a rollerball pen, just something that's hard and not soft, that will transfer the white onto your canvas. And you're just going to trace over all the black lines that you feel like you need.
Now, right. It's relatively important to make sure that the glass ball is hanging vertically. Otherwise, it looks like it's kind of teetering.
Yes, I would say that it's very important to not angle your ball to the side.
Because it can look tippy.
Well, and I don't think that the picture would have the placement of the bulb, and this is just based on a. So what had happened is I've been working on an idea, kind of like this for a while, you know, because we have that hero series going on, and hadn't quite figured out how I wanted to tell the story, and then saw a blog. This I've been doing bath bombs, but through this whole thing, I saw this blog of this family. And they had taken their Christmas pictures in their Christmas ball. And they explained all that. So I did a bunch of reading on that. And then I looked up all this photography stuff on the reflections and what's realistic and what's not. And it was a crazy research week. I'm just transferring the lines that I need. I'm not going to worry about personally transferring the little tree branch reflection lines. I'm just going to work those in kind of organically. But I have put them in there so you guys would have them just in case that they were challenging. Because I wanted you to paint maybe even a little above your skill level so you could have this holiday. I know a lot of you guys are trying to come up with presents for loved ones and, you know, something that's sort of economical and reasonable. So I wanted to make sure you guys had this. And my little flag. On the flag, you know, I put in, you know, my flag, but wherever you're living, maybe, you know, in your family you have a different flag. I left it blank on the Traceable. You put in what you have. Just like hair color, just like everything else. You tell your story. I'm just transferring that over. I love this little girl and her dad. All right. You're watching Riverdale, so you're like, oh, she's a blossom because she has red hair. I'm sorry.
Oh, I have no idea what you just said.
A couple people did, because there's got to be some people watching Riverdale. It's the show of many redheads. So
Oh, really?
I appreciate it. I'm going to just use my Traceable and go around and just make sure my ball looks really nice going around. If it's not perfect, I'll grab out my plate again and retransfer it on. Okay, let's take this off and see how that went. And you can see what I mean by it works for a long time. I have a lot of transfer paper left here, so there's no point in me letting this go. This isn't a one-time use thing. And look what a beautiful job it does, getting my image on the canvas. Now I can clean up any extra lines I have that I don't want by getting clean water and just rubbing those out if I was heavy-handed, which I was. And some of the transfer paper kind of dusted onto my painting. So just like chalk, it will do that trick. And it looks like I did okay on the Christmas ball, so I don't have to get my plate out again. And so now I'm going to paint in the ball. I'm going to sip, though, before I start, because it's the whole thing.
I will sip too.
You sip too?
Sip too. We shall have virtual cheers and sippy coffee.
Sip, cheers!
Cheers!
Happy holidays!
Happy holidays!
I hope everybody's good.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
If it's not a holiday for you, I hope you're having a lovely time anyways.
Have a happy Saturday.
Have a happy Saturday.
Yes.
It's all good. Or whatever day you're watching this, which might be a Monday or Tuesday because YouTube leaves them up.
And for all of you who, from me to you, have a very merry unbirthday.
I came correct this year. Don't even feel bad for John. I'm ready for his birthday.
There was no political commentary there.
Oh, okay.
That was just
I'm
Mad
just saying
Hattery.
people who've been here for a while know. So I've got my number for cat's tongue, right? Kind of looks like a filbert, but it's pointed. You could use, again, a smaller round, a smaller bright. You just want a brush that's going to let you work the inside of this Christmas ball with little difficulty. I'm going to pull out some of my blue paint, and I'm going to add a little white to it. You know, get it more into a sky blue, not so much a nighttime blue. What I'm looking for. Feels like a sky blue. And when that's all nice and loaded, I'm going to come in just very carefully. Should be about a shade or two darker than the lightest part of the sky. So the nice part is if you have this light sky in, then you know I need to make this a little darker. because everything in the Christmas ball will be darker. The reflection is darker, which is sort of interesting because there's the color of the ball. And I kind of implied that this one is a, darker kind of maybe metallic silver blue ball with a little gold cap, because the ball impacts the reflection as well. Just painting around this very carefully. Super fun. And just all through here is nice. Until we get to the outer edge, the directionality of the brush stroke, unless it's overtly obvious, like if you're having really choppy strokes that are really showing, and then you might want to smooth those out a bit, isn't important. But at the outer edge, you definitely want to start rounding the stroke. If you paint out anything, you can always put it back in. You see how I'm rounding the stroke on this outer edge as I move out from my figures? Moving out, moving out, moving out. Starting the dark value will be coming up. Uh-oh. Went outside my ball. So I went outside the line where I'm meant to. So I'm just going to get my brush wet and use my towel to take out the extra paint and then erase like that. So that's another way to erase. Lots of ways to erase. That's just one. Another one is let the paint dry.
That was like a magic eraser.
I know. So some of why I get away with this, to be fully candid, is that I'm using a paint. There's a few paints that are just so quality that the minute that they're dry, you can do that. Some of the paints, right, that are out there, they could cure 24 hours and they might lift up. And just my only point to saying that is if that's happening to you, don't feel like you just can't make paint go. Just know not all paint is the same.
Right.
And it's not like, they have to go in there and say, don't do these techniques with our paint because it might lift up.
And even within that, there's no standardized paint must do this requirement.
No, not unless they volunteer to try to meet the ASTM-D standards, and that's entirely voluntary.
Yeah,
it's a good organization. Like, the standards are good. I'm into the standards. It's just some paint companies run it that as an opportunity to create a base language for art materials. And some companies just ignore it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's it's not really even such as necessarily an intentional disregarding, but there's so many new paint companies and art companies coming on the market that they just may not even be familiar with the standards and practices of the art industry.
Yeah. If you have a new paint and you want to participate in that, that's something you can just join and participate in. They make entry as easy as possible. They want you to be part of that process so that there's some sort of uniform standards. Because if there's not uniform standards, then it makes it very hard for new artists and people to come in, even experienced artists, and make informed decisions.
Yeah, so, conforming to, the ASTM standards is a really useful thing for you as a consumer, for your paint companies to do. Because it helps know that you're going to get uniformity, that you're going to know your colors are consistent.
And if you want to know, I don't know if I'll bring it over to the close cam, and we'll talk about this more next year. But we're talking about this little series of letters here.
Among others.
Right. So this one here, 4303, is for light fastness, LF, and this is 1, which means as much as paint can't fade out, this is as archival as it can get. And there's an exact scientific ratio of how much fading in gallery conditions that this paint has over time that they do. I don't do any of that math because it's on one of those crazy graphs. But basically, this means good.
And PR...
C1, LF1 is good. LF4, bad.
Now, that PR thing was also its pigment number, huh?
Yeah, the pigment. Yeah, if you see the pigment, so it's PR122, that's actually the real color. Quinacridone Magenta is the vanity name. They just happen to use the correct vanity name at Golden because that's how they are. But the actual color is PR122. Golden will use the exact, they will never mess with you. They will use the name of what it is. The most historically possibly accurate possible name of what it is. And then also name their mediums, confusing things that...
Well, it makes sense to the people who named it.
It makes sense to the people who named all the mediums. I know.
I mean,
I love them so much.
And what was funny is you talk to them and they're like, okay, so this is what the artist told us to call it.
But and even when they renamed it and they color coded it, I was like, oh, it's like the Dewey Decimal System.
It is the most logical approach to trying to...
Yes, Sheldon Cooper designed it. Just so you know. The brightest minds in the world.
Although I have to say, it is an interesting challenge.
So once I've got that all painted in, that's pretty enjoyable. I like doing that. I also like to come in and put my dark color up on the top of my the metal. And the metal is, believe it or not, a mix of yellow ochre and Doc's purple. And I don't use that much black in this mix at all. But this is the base. Yellow ochre and Doc's purple, because these two are nearly complementary colors. They're certainly as close as it gets. Using them together grays out the yellow and gives me a nice base for anything metallic.
Now, there were several questions about the order in which you're painting things.
Oh, I'd love to answer them.
And just sort of in general, you're sort of like not painting the ball entirely blue and then leaving out some of these lighter colored areas so that it's easier on the subsequent paint layers, right?
Do they mean like why it's streaky?
Well, no. So why didn't you paint the ball all the way blue and then put the tracing over it? And
could have, but then it would have been hard to trace it. I'd had to put the tracing back.
That's what I mean. Is like if you'd painted the ball entirely blue, then you trace it again.
You could, if you wanted to do that. You could. It's not as effective for me teaching here to do that. That's a where I can take away a needless step. Or a step that, feels like it might be overtly confusing remotely, I will do that. But you may be like, oh, I'm willing to line it up twice. But it is a challenge to line tracing over tracing exactly.
Mm-hmm. And you've also talked about sometimes using student paints, you have to be careful about the order that you put colors down.
Yeah, very careful because it's hard to do that. All right, so I have a nice kind of dark base starting there. That can be drying, and I'm going to just come across here and just make sure I'll put my little lips back in a minute. My little decoratives in a minute. But I just want to have that base color there so that when I come to put the metal in, it's not really a problem. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to be letting this dry. I want to come back and do this next layer, but there's just no point until I am ready to do all the lights and shadows. So I'm going to start putting in the daughter and father, and that means I'm going to get my reds out. Now, predominantly for this, I am using some Cad Red Light, and I'm using Quinacridone Magenta. The Naphthol Red is very much for the flag, though I do have, if you don't have any, I have a way to kind of get these two sort of close enough where on the painting it probably won't register as too weird. But this is, the flag, and so we're going to be a little careful with what we're doing.
You got enough room there on your palette there?
Let me see. Oh, barely.
I can shrink down the...
It's okay, because we're going to do the new thing with the palette, right? In the new studio where I can
do you want me
have
to shrink
it
do you want me to shrink that picture-in-picture down a little bit?
Huh?
Do you want me to shrink the picture-in-picture?
No, I think we can get around out. Well, let's see if I can move it over here.
I do not mind.
All right, there, that gives it something, and then I'll... Okay, so I'm going to take my number 4 still, and I'm going to mix out some skin tone. And my skin tone for this is going to be my Quinacridone Magenta and my yellow ochre. We're going to mix kind of this rosy colored here. All right, rosy, 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 rosy. I'm going to add a little burnt umber to it. going to get some white into this. See, I'm going the white. And I picked this because this is really good for redheads. Because redheads will have skin that has a redder tone to it, a little more purple underneath, a little more blue underneath. So I try to think about those colors. And I'm going to come across and paint this across his neck initially. All right, coming across here. And here's a weird thing. I am going to paint it up his head a bit because to get that military cut look, I need to sort of dry brush the edge here. And that means I got to have some skin under it.
That makes sense.
Otherwise, he's got a blue, weird blue thing. And I think the military would notice that and be like, hey, are you human? I don't. Okay, weird. I know, weird. I'm just getting a little more, and I'm going to do her hand really fast. Right, it's got this nice little hand, and for that I may have to put on my glasses because it's a little tiny, tiny thing. Wonderful. All right, here we go. Here we go. Oh my goodness, this is nice. Just painting that in. And then when that's in, I'm going to offload a little bit. I'm going to get my darker color here. And I'm going to add just a smidge of blue to the mix. And this is how we create the shadow on skin. And I'm going to come here and put the ear in with that. And take this back on the neck a little bit. See how we're doing?
Yeah.
A little bit. If your paint's lifting as you paint it, it just is, it's not binding. You're going to have to really let it dry between layers. Like if I were like in a room and I had some Economy Studio paint, I would be definitely letting it all dry as I was going. I'm going to add a little of this darker skin tone to the bottom of her hand. And what I'm looking at off camera is the original painting. I'm going to darken this over here.
That's the same one we've got picture in picture.
This exact same one we've got picture in picture. This one I'm painting right now live with you guys. The other one I painted to be ready for this one. I'm going to add a little more blue now. It's going to get a lot darker. I'm going to come behind the ear. And just add that a little bit. Back of the neck and along where his shirt is touching him. And you can add just a smidge to the bottom of her hand if she needs it. I've got a little blue showing through here, so it's worth it for me to get my base color again and get a lot of white on it. None of the blue. Make sure that her hand has a bit of a highlight on it and the blue is covered, and I can even add a bit of this to his neck there. It can be very nice. I like painting skin tones. It's super fun.
Yeah.
So her shirt is, interestingly enough, I did it as a blue base. So I took a little of my burnt sienna over to my blue. But not much, because if you take too much, it just gets green or gray. You want it still to be blue. Misting my palette, so I still have color. And then I'm going to get a little white into it. There you go. So you can see it's just a little bit grayed. You can even grab a smidge of purple, but just a smidge because Docs is so powerful. These cool colors not only make great shadows, but they create a great base for painting white. Because you can easily just build up, and as you build up the values, it builds up the feeling of the white paint. So I'm just here, painting that all in, all around here. Under her head. And this is a nice bulky sweater because it's a cold day, and so she's like got family that makes sure she's warm. Here we go. Oh, that's nice. That's in.
Yeah.
So she's looking pretty good. Interestingly enough, actually, I'm going to do something a bit similar. No, I'm going to put out a black. It's just a good time to do it. Just a smidge, though. I use very little in this painting, just a few areas. I'm going to take a smidge of my black over here into her sweater mix. You can see I just graded a bit.
Yeah.
Get some of my white. And I'm going to make this sort of gray off-white color. And that will be the basis for this flag. This will help my white colors pop on my flag more. So if you have any white in your flag, you'll want to start with this sort of soft gray. I'll do the little pole in a minute. I got a lot of stuff to paint in. I got to put in his jacket and his hat and then their hair. So the jacket was an interesting color combo. I'm going to come here and I've got a little purple already in my yellow, as you can see. Grab a little gray, brown there. So little purple into my yellow, little brown. I'm going to grab some green. Too much green. Look at that. Too much green. There we go. So just going to bring the brown over into this. And somewhere along the way, I'm going to get, and hopefully you can see it really well, this sort of muted greenish brown color. It should look like kind of every bit of weird dark dead dirt tree branch, everything. And I'm going to use this as the basis of his camo. If you have trouble getting this, you can switch to like trying to get it with an ultramarine, because sometimes ultramarine gets into these color ranges really easy. A little white, and you can start to see it. This is how we get that very muted color. And then where the these patterns tell you where the person was, right? Because everybody has camo like it's different for it. It'd be crazy to wear like jungle camo in the Arctic, right? Everybody would see you would just look like a weird guy with jungle camo. So you gotta have a effective camo.
Now, Jennifer asked, do you always put down a soft gray before any white?
Not always, but often. It's definitely a trick you want to have in your art kit to be able to pull out when needed. So I've got a busy painting with a lot going on, and I've got to be able to show subtle highlights here of white where the flag's got a little bit of highlighting. And by having that gray value, I can pull it up and pull it up and pull it up, and it'll read as white. And then I'll still have room for some highlights and things. Making sure I'm still staying in there. The first, the basic color. I'll just trim around the hand. Now, if you guys were doing the double traceable, hopefully the ball allowed you guys to like line it up and change out the people. All right, here we go. And remember, you can also take those traceables and print them out as coloring pages for your kids. I do that all the time for mine always want to color the traceables. So that is a use that you're totally allowed to do. I'm going to pull this down here a little bit, kind of over the blue, just so that they'll marry when I start putting in the branches and reflections. I haven't even had to use any glazing liquid yet, which I think is pretty good. do the collar. Just doing the collar. How are we doing?
Really good.
How's everybody doing? So we kind of have him in that sort of military brown green. There's probably an exact color that somebody knows. Feel free to share.
I'm totally sure that
I'm sure it has a name, right? So you notice how I'm every once in a while grabbing my purple? The reason is that purple grays out that yellow, and even though I'm painting with super saturated colors, prevents it from becoming too bright.
Now, I'm gonna guess that somewhere out there is an SOP on how to mix this paint color.
Oh my gosh, I want to find that. Is that a thing?
I wonder if there's like they've got the like book reference number, like, you know, it's, you know,
If that's a thing, that's the coolest thing ever.
The Army Manual 123.45.
I bet it has a pigment number.
Paint color Army Brown.
That would be really cool.
Olive drab.
I'm going to add a little white to my brush when I do the top of the cap because everything on top of the cap is a little bit lighter, and that'll help me remember that. Doesn't have to be a lot. It just needs to be one shade lighter than what's below it. Right? And then I might even come back and add a little of this to the collar so the collar is easy to see. Yeah, I did that. This all is going to get lightened up and changed so much that I have a lot of room to do that. Now his skin tone is pretty good. And I really don't have anything to do but to take a smidge, and I mean the smidgiest smidge ever, right, into my skin tone color of black. And see how it's kind of like it's just a little deeper than when I use the blue. And we'll come right here. Just make sure that I've got a little defining line just at the ear. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Just helps us. Because you want his ear to seem like an ear. All right. That being done, interestingly enough, this auburn hair is based on, crazily, had red light and diox purple. And you're like, wait, what? Yep. There we go. So this is my deepest color. I want it to definitely have that red hue to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to paint in her head with this base. It doesn't look when she's all painted up that there's any purple in her hair. So it would be really hard to even know how to mix this, wouldn't it? If you didn't already know. And I am paying attention to the direction of the strokes because her hair is in a ponytail. We've got a little part to talk about here and a highlight. I love the highlights on the hair. They're like my favorite. So be sure, I'm going to need a sippy break in a second. As soon as the hair's base is in, I think I'm going to put that in. Then I will have put the underpainting of everything inside the bulb in, and it's a good time for me to have a sip.
Mm-hmm.
Of my coffee.
Of the coffee.
And I do the same thing kind of with her ponytail, and then I talk about it a little bit with the brush stroke. At this stage, it's not super important. But why not? You're here anyways, right?
Yeah.
She's so tucked in tightly. You can make her hair shorter, you can make her hair longer, you can change the color. Just check the videos in the iCard. That's why they're there. I'm just trying to give her a clean line. And I did that by adding enough water to my paint to create a fluidity. And there's enough pigment in it, so now that when I brush it out, it's a smooth line. See how it stopped being scratchy?
Yeah.
And then her hair and his hair are close to each other. So I'm going to... Now, here's the deal with his hair. Right? We have to create the look of... I don't know, I think it's called like high and tight or something, but it's that his neck is trimmed, you know, short. He's got thick hair, but that his neck is trimmed.
Yeah.
So you're looking at this.
High and tight.
High and tight. Okay. So I'm going to pull this down, and you're just going to want to make sure that you leave some neck. So see, I'm pulling this down in a dry brush.
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to help me do that. Tap it. And it's near her head. I'm going to just go down, but I'm going to be super careful because I want at least this much space between the bottom of his hair. See, the brush strokes kind of imply the growth layer and the cut. Oh, the shape of his head is sort of round and very thick up here, but here we're going to be just like, nope, 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 nope. Shave, 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 shave. That's how we do that. And now you can see why having a little skin tone under all that is very helpful. Hopefully everybody got the email.
Yeah.
Today's lesson.
Testing out some of our new web services, trying to get all those hammered out for the new year.
Well, since we had to reschedule and we re-uploaded suddenly and stuff like that, we wanted you guys to have a chance to know what was happening. All right, it's a good time to get up and stretch yourself. It's a good time to get up and move your neck. Good time to do some self-care and make sure you're doing okay, because sometimes when we get painting, we get hunched, we get in a bad position, we forget to move the easel and not our bodies, and we do all that. So every once in a while, having a little moment, sippy some coffee and think about having a little wiggle is always a good idea. Are you reading comments, John? Because you got so quiet. Oh!
I snuck off and made coffee.
You snuck off. I was like, oh, waiting for you to weigh in, and then you didn't say nothing about fitness or health.
And then all of a sudden the mic's gone. You're like dead air. You're like, where is he? And I was like, turn the corner on the studio, make her jump. That was microwaving. Oh, Mike's gone.
I distracted him making coffee. It's a thing in our house. Coffee is a thing in our house. I'm going to mist my palette. You'll see me misting my palette because here's some truth, guys. Acrylic paint dries. If you see someone painting, they've been painting a really long time, and you don't see them using water or having any paint dry, I would think maybe it got mislabeled and think it's oils.
I think technically it cures.
It cures, that's right.
So whether or not you missed it, it will continue to react and cure there, won't it?
Yeah.
So.
Well, so this will slow, like this is already cured, so the water isn't going to do anything to this, right?
Yeah, once you get it out in the air, though, you're really fighting hard to keep it from curing.
That's what the mediums to slow down the drying time are for, so. Woo, that's looking pretty good.
That's pretty good.
We got some stuff in. We don't actually have that much more to go because this, once we start to get this in, then we can start getting everything else in really easily.
All right, let's
rock this out.
I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready. I'm going to use my number 4.
I'm ready.
So you can just look like if this were a bright, if you were painting a bright, you'd want to paint something about that size or smaller. This is a 6, so you can see how these are well sized in relationship to each other. So this or a 4 in a bright would be fine. Sure, I have a 4 bright in here somewhere, but I could not tell. Oh, is that 2 or 4? 4. See? You're just trying to get something that gives you a size that you can get into. This is also 4 round. Kind of get the jam where I'm like, any of these brushes will go. Any. More size for the space. So I'm going to get my brush wet. Now I've got to do this very sort of dark shadow at the outside edge. So I'm going to take my blue and purple and brown again. Make my dark color, right? In the dark night. The dark. And I'm going to start coming all around my Christmas ball with this dark value. Not too far into him because I've still got to do some branches and stuff, but I've just got to start to get this in, and everything should be cured enough now for it to start to go. So some of the decisions I make when I'm saying, oh, I'm going to paint this layer next, is that I can hair dry it and do it another way, or I can allow it to air drying and do its thing, and then just paint a different area of the painting that's ready for some paint. And this being sort of in ahead of time will let us really play with our reflection and stippling and all that. The trick is don't get it on him too much because we still have to do his camo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to come right underneath our little topper. Okay, I know it's snowing outside, but what do we have the heater turned up to?
You had it on there. I'm not sure. Is it warm in there?
Or, yeah, but it could just be the lights.
Could be. And
That's going to be changed.
One of the nice things is we can just open the back door.
It's true. And then all the mosquitoes that somehow haven't frozen will come get me. Because Texas mosquitoes apparently don't freeze. So this isn't black, but this is a very deep color, and this creates the basis of what we'll be seeing on our little ball. So we have that in. You can kind of see that going around. Now that I have that and he's dry, I can start painting in his camouflage. So I still have this color over here, and it dried on me, so I'm going to pull it back out again. So a little purple, right? We want it to gray the yellow a smidge. Some brown. Smidge of green. So we're getting those kind of colors, right?
Yeah.
We're just creating that gray that would disappear. It doesn't even have to be perfect. That's one of the things, like, sometimes I think we feel like, oh, it's got to be perfect. It just has to be right. So I've made this lighter shade that you're seeing here. It's not my darkest shade. I'm loading up my brush. And what I'm going to begin to do, how I did this is I'm just going to tap my brush onto his jacket. And I leave spots of the dark color showing underneath. I'm tapping on the bottom edge. It's okay if you go over your purple because these things are going to weave together. At the shoulders, I tend to kind of use this to clean up those edges, but then I get as random as I can inside this space.
You got to break up the patterns.
That's right.
That's what camo's all
Cheetah.
about. It's, you know, one part sneaky in the woods with one part sneaky in the forest and one part sneaky in the desert. And
is this sort of all-terrain sneaky?
I think so.
Okay,
I think
you
it's
know better
just
than I
it's
do.
general purpose sneaky.
General purpose sneaky. I had a lot of military people in my family, but they were all done with that by the time, you know, I came around. I think you had more exposure to it than I did.
To the military?
Mm-hmm, because your grandpa was still in
yeah.
there.
Yeah, no, I was real fortunate. I spent a couple years growing up on Richard Skobauer Air Force Base in Belton, Missouri, where my grandfather was stationed for a long time. So, yeah, he was a Chief Warrant Officer 5 in the Air Force. I believe he originally enlisted in the Army, but the Air Force didn't exist. And then, so when the Air Force existed, they were like, we need some officers. Could you come over and work on this cool radar stuff that we've got going on? And he was like, yeah, I seem to know a little bit about that stuff. So
it always works.
Yep.
I'm going to add a lot more white to this color, and it's going to lighten it up a whole nother value, as you can see. It's interesting because when you really look at this, it's like kind of pixelated.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like too much of a thing to paint. So I was like,
They're like paint pixels.
I didn't feel like doing that. So I was like, we're going to do it like this. But we are trying to break up, and you want to leave different values so that, you know, what we're painting is supremely obvious to anybody who has to wear it. That's really who you're trying to make sure. Like the stuff about the hair or the mom's hair being up high and in a bun, or the way his hair is cut or the way this camo is put together is more about the person in your life that wore this uniform than anything else, because they'll have very strong feelings about it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just making sure that we've got this sort of tap. I'm just using the brush. I'm just tapping in a regular pattern. There we go. Now one more. And I like to put in a dark color really last. So I'm going to pull out a little of my brown over here. It's pretty loaded. My brown is all glumpy. I'm going to add some purple to it. Some yellow. And some green in there. See how it's getting very dark?
Mm-hmm.
And very muted. These colors are all about graying each other out and getting deeper. So it's an interesting journey. All right. Loading this up. You can see I'm just tapping in some of this darker space.
Yeah.
Make sure that we have some values here. Values are important. Might even take this color and kind of go underneath the collar. I'll come back with a little bit of black. So you can darken and lighten as much as you need to reflect the camo that you feel like you're talking about. Most military art uniforms are not in, I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying a lot of them are not in really highly noticeable colors.
But they're Army uniforms?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple kinds of uniforms. I mean, there's your dress, there's your dress uniform, which is,
Still
very
not
much
going to be in neon pink.
Well, your dress uniform, generally you'll have a colors, dress uniform that'll have like blues or greens, especially for officers, because you want to be able to.
I just add a little black to the color, and I'm just making sure we've got a little shadow here.
Yeah, those guys you generally want to see.
That too.
But most of the enlisted army men are not in jobs where you want to like go, hey, quickly identify that guy. They just generally want to be kind of like, you don't see us. Thus the prolific use of camouflage.
Yeah.
So their uniforms tend to be kind of, camouflaged.
I was being sneaky somewhere. I don't want to be seen. So I'm taking this color that I was using to make my shadow, and I'm also making a little shadow here at the hat. It just kind of comes back to the seam on the brim. And I'm also making sure that I've got a little seam on the brim here so that what's happening on top, right, is pretty good. And if I don't have quite enough highlight on top, I can always come with my little white back into my color, making a very, very light color. You know what I'm doing? I'll just tap a highlight on the top of my hat. Wherever you need it, you just put it in. Couple little spots. Just show a slightly lighter aspect. All right, pretty good. Pretty darn good. Now that we've got that in, we can get our sweater in for sure. You guys ready to get her sweater in? Oh, look at my glass. I think it's a whole look. Okay. So we know that her hair starts out with our cad red, right? And a little of our diox. Let's mix that back over here. I'm also going to grab some of my burnt sienna.
We have a young singer in the background.
Yeah. But at least we won't be content ID'd. So I'm making a value that's lighter than the first one I mixed. It's a little more to the red. Should feel a little more chestnut. And I'm going to start coming here. And just brushing down. I'm going to leave a little of this dark color right under the hat.
Well, she actually had her karaoke machine on.
Did she?
Yeah, she did. She was up the front just singing away. I was like, that's why it's so loud.
Oh, no. How'd she find it?
She has a song in her.
In her heart.
She all the time. That one sings.
I'm just brushing this down. Another layer. But I'm really brushing this very lightly. Can you see how lightly I'm doing it?
Oh, yeah.
So the deep values are still showing under, right, under the hair. Those deep values are still there. But now we're adding this color. Dip. Pick up some more for our girl. And let's talk about what's happening here. So her hair, I might even move this a little bit if that's okay for my comfort. I'm going to pull this along the side of her hair. And I'm going to come right to You have to imagine that there's a little bit of a part here. I'm going to be real light on my brush stroke at the top of her crown of her head. See how light I'm just dusting it? And then I'm going to darken up as I come around the outside. I may still have to come back with a dark value for the deep shadow, but I just want to start getting in the... And here on her crown, I'll add some more pigment. So we've got brush directionality at play there. We've got a whole bunch of things that are helping us tell our story. Now I'll move it back over here. I'm always just trying to move it where it's easy enough to brush stroke. We're going to definitely, like under the hat, leave this dark, dark color. Take this here. Just to the outside of the curls coming down. So she has slightly wavy curly hair. I have to have the dark shadow if I'm going to talk about those waves. Now that I've got that, I'm going to pull a little more of my red in there, and I'm going to add some of my yellow ochre. Let's come here. I am now focusing this sort of highlight color. Some of it might come down a little bit to the ends, but most of it is going to be here at the center of his head. There, we're pulling that down.
Yeah.
Just dusting this down here. And then same thing that we were doing earlier. I'm reloading, moving to the side. Right there. A little bit right here, but not much. Going around, and then a little bit more over the top here. Really important in this story for me was her hair and his hair matching. And I really kind of went to the redhead because it's such an uncommon color.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very unlikely that two people with hair this close to each other wouldn't be related.
Right.
Right? Now I might come and get a little more brown into it just to make sure it's not getting too much.
Now that is interesting. This could be a brother and sister.
Yes. They're related though. We know that
yeah.
about them.
Yeah.
I'm adding some more ochre into this right now. Keep going. So we're just going to... Right here at the center of the hair, you can kind of see this sort of ochreish, red highlight. Come here and just go across the top of her head. Just a few bits here. While this is all having its little moment, I am going to make a nice dark value to kind of come back and work out some of what's happening at the hair. So I'm going to take my brown and a little purple. And some red. Get back into that deep redhead shadow range, right? And then I'm going to just make sure a nice shadow under the hat. I'm making this uneven little shadow. I'm going to make sure that on her hair, part there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little shadow back here at the bun, like you would have, right? Because it would be a little more in shadow there. So if at any point you lose the shadows that are helping you define the hair, don't feel like you can't. Come back. and work them back in, because you actually can as you're going. Now I'm going to get a little of my red, smidge of my yellow, smidge
Betty
of
says
purple,
that
and the purple is just what keeps it from being so saturated that we don't believe it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Betty says that there's no shortage of redheads up in Ireland.
No.
Well, I've got some family from there. We went up and visited. There was a run of them.
Yeah, it was true. I kind of felt at home. Everyone kept asking what county I was from.
We Coonies tend to throw girls.
You do, man.
There was a lot of excitement about a Cooney boy.
I'm going to wipe this off. I'm going to do an interesting thing. I'm going to come right into my ochre. There's going to be a little red in it. And I'm going to come right across the head with just this. And I'm just dashing a little reflection line that we're going to accentuate in a second. And this is what makes her hair and his hair feel so real. A couple other places that you could have that, by the way. You could have one right here. And you could have a few at her ends if you wanted to. Now once I have that, I'm going to wipe off but not rinse. I'm going to get some of my white and load it on the tip of my brush. And then, yeah, this is just like that. You could use zinc if you're having trouble with your white paint. And I'm going to make the lightest little reflection mark. And it's going to be not an even line across, because that won't feel believable. It's got to have some strong points and some weak points. You want it to be so light. See how I'm not even bending the bristles on the canvas? This is about having a light hand. Across her head as well. Right where we've been planting the highlight over the crown. See how we did?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just makes it feel so real. We do one up here. Maybe a little bit right here. Wherever we told the story that the sun would be hitting her in a strong way. And I think we just nailed the hair on these redheads. Yeah. So that's how you would do that really auburn hair. I get asked that question like a lot. And I've done a simple version of red hair, but that's how you rock that hair down in acrylic.
Lots of people are expressing that they're really happy you showed the red hair on this. This is really nice.
Yeah. And it just works for this particular image, I think, in a really special way. But what makes it work the most is if you're happy with the image when you're all done.
Yes.
So, my brown paint and a little of my phthalo blue. But I want it still more to the blue here. I'm going to wipe this off. I'm going to get some white. But because I have pigment on my brush, see how it stains it? Because it's a very powerful pigment. And my brush is dry. It's not real. A little more blue than that. It's got to come up in layers. That was just a little too light. So I'm just darkening it one shade because you got to build it up. I'm dry brushing on the back, letting some of the blue just be in shadow. Coming here, down the arm, across the forearm. And you can see a lot of the canvas underneath is showing through, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're going to build up some layers. And here it's got to be just so light. So light. I'm going to dip in water just a smidge because I want there to be a nice line on the sweater right here and at the hand. Now, once I have that, just a little bit of blue shadow on there, I'm going to make an even lighter tone.
An even lighter tone.
I'm going to come at the shoulder and highlight this. Little bit on the back. On the arm. Across here, so there's a little bit of an elbow joint. See how we're going? Wipe my brush off. We'll get some pure white. Right here, in her shoulder, I'm going to add some pure white. A little bit on her back. A little on the forearm and a little on her bicep here. See how that creates a bunch of shape in the sweater? So when we have that, we can start putting in the shadow. And the shadow is kind of an interesting thing for me because I'm going to use glaze. You're going to use a transparent paint. And if what you have is phthalo, it's pretty transparent already. So you should be able to either build it up in thin layers and create this look, or use a glaze and create this look. I'm going to just add my glaze, and you can see this makes it very transparent. This product slows down the drying time of paint and glazes. Not everything called glazing liquid does that. Just this brand's glazing liquid. You always have to read the bottle of what you buy.
Yeah.
Because again, like we said earlier, no standards. So there's not a, industry consensus of what a glazing liquid should or shouldn't do. Right now they're just trying to decide what a gesso shouldn't do right now. It's a big discussion. So I've added a little purple to cool it even. And I'm going to come under here, under her arm, using my glaze to make sure that my paint is flowing off my brush nicely, and should be slightly transparent, like his camo should show through. And you can take this even up into her. See how we're doing? You need more pigment, grab it, bring it over. Then this comes around the hand. There's a little shadow cast under the hand. And also, and this is sort of also critical, is under the flag. And I like to add a shadow right here, where her head is tucked into him.
Mm-hmm.
She's just buried her face. There should be a little shadow there that says, oh, that happened. We're just creating these shadows because a lot of times you guys will be like, how can I improve the painting? And one of the #1 things that you can do is add the shadow that would be there cast by the objects that are present. Might even come with this glaze under the hat here and on the side. See how I'm doing? Make that even a deeper shadow.
Yeah, I can see it.
So I really like all that.
Yeah.
The last thing that I have to do here is my flag, and that means I've got to get some little brushes. And by little, I'm going to show you right here, I mean teeny tiny little dudes.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't have much space, do I?
No.
Little bits of space. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush, get a little of my ochre, and get a little of my black, and mix together a very dark black gold color. And I'm going to make sure that there's just a smidge of something coming from her finger to our flag, and it's going to come out here. And then there's going to be a little ball. I really need my glasses for this. If seeing is a problem, definitely get some type of magnifier for this part. Have that there. Now, I'm going to, I've got enough blue, but I'm going to put out my naphthol. If you don't have any naphthol and you can't get naphthol and you don't have a red that feels correct, one thing that you can do in a pinch, it won't be perfect, but it won't be bad, is a little cad red and quinacridone together can make something that feels, look at that, pretty crimson. You see that? So it's
Yeah,
not
so-
bad. It's not the same, but it's not bad. So if you don't have this, you can do these two and get by. Anybody gets that close on your painting, I don't know. They're up to something weird anyway, so you should talk to them. Like, don't be looking that close. I mean, like, look at it, but don't look at it. So I'm going to put in first my little square up here. And I'm going to also kind of take this little line down to, this is going to be a shadow that's in my flag layer. I'm going to pull out a little square. And paint this out. Now I may have to adjust this as I'm painting my flag to get enough stripes on there. I'm going to add a little white to this mix, just a smidge of it. And up on the top of the flag, I'm going to do this lighter. All right, so we've got that. Now I'm going to take, I have to really rinse out my detail brush so the next part works. And if you need it, you may need some fluid white. Or just use the white that you have. The nice thing about a fluid paint like this, which is the golden fluid acrylic, you could also use white craft paint. So if you already have craft paint, you don't have to do this part. I'm going to load my brush up. The reason I like this is all the pigment that's in here is in here, but this is already thinned out, so it'll flow off my brush, so I'm not thinning it down. And I'm going to come here and just sort of put this in. I like to have, like this, there's the stripe that comes right under here. And that lets you get the red stripe where you want it. Add a little of this right there. You can also take this while you're here and sort of go dot. Make some little random dots here. Try to do the pattern, but know that's a really small scale, so it's more important that it's like, it gives you the sense of what you're looking at than anything else. We've got this right here. I'll put one right here. And we'll be adjusting this, but the nice shadow underneath and all of that is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have another one. There we go. Not bad. Just putting it in. For me, this is always one of the more challenging things because I have a bit of, well, dyslexia, a little bit. And sometimes with certain types of patterns or things, I just have to work a little harder to see them accurately. Even though they're very familiar.
Right.
My brain doesn't always give me that information as I would want it. So I've got this basis in. Now I'm going to come and get some.
Now, if you were trying to draw it at scale, it would be 7 red and 6 white.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I think in the example flags that they had printed out, it was, they actually had 6 in the little mini flag. I don't think these are always, but I'm sure the ones that they hand out are totally spot on accurate.
Yeah, that's probably got to be something that it'd be handy to have around when you're doing all the flags. Making sure you have your, like, which one goes underneath the blue field? How many do I count down? You know.
We're just making sure we have this here. So hopefully at this point, we have kind of this feeling. This was my naphthol. But again, you could have mixed your, you know. I'm going to get some of my heavy body white on my little brush now. And I'm going to add smidges of this highlight right here in a couple places on my stripes, like at the edge. But not everywhere, so that it has some different elements. And then I'm also going to grab my white and my ochre. More ochre than anything right now. And I'm going to add a highlight to the ball. Can you see that? And a little bit to the rod.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have enough contrast between the flag and the camo, you can always take your black, little of your blue, get back into your glazing while you've got your detail brush, and you can come add some kind of, I don't know, they're like there's a deeper shadow that sort of helps things pop. Put it close to where the object is, and sometimes that will help it pop out from wherever you have it. See how we did that there?
Yeah.
Everything just pops a little bit.
Almost there.
Almost done. Like, seriously, that was the hardest part. Everything else is like, so if you were a cyclist, this would be like you just went up the Pic du Nord in France and you're just huffing and puffing up the hill, but now you're coming back down.
And now you just
to
got
Mazamet.
Cruising the other side.
Some French people are like, what? Yeah.
You were chilling out in La Bastide.
La Bastide Esperanza.
Yeah. So anyway, we're on to the glass reflectiveness.
We're on to the glass. My brown is getting so gummy. I'm gonna put a little bit out.
You probably could use some more.
I could. I need some less gummy brown. I'm having a whole moment. So I'm putting some more out. I'll put out some green as well because I'm kind of out of it.
Oh yeah, Aslan points out that you could easily customize the flag for any country around the world.
Oh yes, and should.
Yeah,
like wherever you live.
It's pretty easy to find the service uniform standards. I know that I was looking at Canada and some of the European ones.
Yeah.
They all UN. They all have really standardized practices for those. So it'd be really easy for you to just look up your uniform standards. Be pretty easy to customize this.
Yeah, it really would. Back into my number 4. I love my number 4.
I look forward to seeing all these. That's going to be something that I'm going to ask you guys. We really, really love seeing these paintings, but this is going to be an especially lovely one to see from our community around the world. So we look forward
and
to
if you
seeing
give
those.
them to somebody, definitely let us know how that went over.
Yeah.
Because we know so many of you are giving these as gifts to family members, and so I love to hook you up for the holidays.
This is we just have such appreciation for all of the servicemen and women out there. So we just love to see all this. So thank you guys. Love everything.
All the good guys around the world.
All the superheroes.
And gals. All the superheroes around the world. All right, so I'm going to start working my ball and then move it out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my white and some of my blue. Okay, and I've got this, and I'm going to just make sure that now I'm going to be like it's an interesting thing. I'm be coming around her, and I will be careful. I might even put my glasses on so I can be careful. It's so helpful to be able to see, and I guess I'm at that stage where I like to put a little tip of blue right there. It's really weird though. So I'm going to come along here. And you can kind of see I'm just sort of tapping this back. Much like his uniform, there's this convex reflection in these metal balls. And in general, with the lighting, they do a few things. There's going to be, what's going to make this look super, super reflective is this dark value contrasted against the white highlights in the branches curving it. So it's an interesting skill set to learn. Sometimes I'm just making sure the edge near her is okay. You need a little more paint. You get a little more paint. Don't even have a feeling about that at all. And when you start putting in the branches and reflections, these brush strokes then make a whole lot more sense. Add a little of that kind of even coming down into him. I'm starting to break him up. Can you see?
Mm-hmm.
So he's, right on this curve, and so a lot of him is going to be lost into this.
I did not drop anything.
You did not?
Nope.
Did the dog do it?
Nope.
Okay.
It was gravity's fault.
Gravity Falls. Alright, so I'm just painting along here. I got a little boo-boo right there. May not be showing up for you guys. It may. I don't know. But I'm going to just take my brush. And so that was just a little bit of water. I wiped off the excess.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
See,
Just
I'm erasing the little boo-boo. It happens. Boo-boos happen. Sometimes they're happy accidents. I believe that. But sometimes they're also just boo-boos. But you know what? We're not painting oil. So we get to fix it super easy. Just doing this around. Pulling it back. And you see I'm just kind of, I'm not having to be too perfect, but I'm just making sure that these feel sort of rough.
Yeah.
I'm going to come around here, taking those down. Then, get some white under this. Right? Some out and not perfectly white. It shouldn't be perfectly white, but it should be very light. So it should be just almost white in its aspect. We may even come back with some like yellow, and we want to add some of this here that we're going to put our branches into. I'm going to come over here and add a good amount. I'm just trying to create the balance of the reflection in the ball because it's just got a lot going on. I'm just tapping this out. And much like him, I'm making sure that it's kind of, you know, uneven. And there. We're exaggerating the values. Exaggerating the effect of the ball. Once you get this mastered, it's sort of like mastered bubbles. Once you master your sort of, I'm going to make this a bigger one and then maybe push this out a little more. Once you master this, then you can put like all kinds of things on your ornaments. You can do it. Now, I don't really want it to get creamy. I want the dark branches to be dark over those light spots that I put. And I may have to put some of them back. So at this stage, I like to draw my canvas so that it's easier.
Okay. Okay, I can do it. So, yeah, please, guys, post these up on Facebook, on our website, TheArtSherpa.com. You'll see some links there in the description below that you can go check out. Please post up your paintings. I'd love to see these. It's we love to see all the artwork from our community, and we love having you guys with us. It's been really wonderful having you out here today. So thank you for coming and painting with us. And
woo, we're almost there.
Almost there.
Almost there. Like seriously, we are coming to the end zone. That's sports. I'm gonna get into my green water. So I'm gonna pull out a little of my green paint and a little of my burnt umber. Add a smidge of my yellow ochre. So this needs to be sort of dark, this first range. If you have to get some blue into it to even darken it up, go ahead and do that. You can get some purple. Whatever it takes to get this first range of green branches. And then I've got so much glare on my palette, I can't see my color. So that's a challenge I have. So like sometimes when I'm mixing, there's so much glare on the wet paint, I can't even see the color I've mixed. We're all, you know, we all have little challenges. So I'm going to just pull some of these dark values from the back forward, right? And what this is that the ball is reflecting some of the holiday trees, right? That's around it, some of the scene around it. So what's close to it, what's far away from it is like right here in this focal point. So we're just using that effect to talk about these things. You'll notice that this here and this here is not too far from each other in in value. In other words, in the grayscale of it.
Yep.
And so they actually, because of that, will kind of blend into each other fairly well. Notice I'm leaving a little bit of that light there. Today for you, tomorrow for me. All right, so pulling this out. Little fuzzy, blurry, across a crazy surface, branches, right? There we go. And I'm leaving a lot of these light spots here, and we'll come back with more, but you got to start somewhere. All right, once I have that, I'm going to get right into my ochre. And this will be a lot lighter, a little more green in it, a little more yellow ochre. That's sort of a highlight, right?
Yeah.
Add some of that lighter color, and if you need to, I need to get a little bit of white into it too, to make sure you can see the transitions. And how I'm deciding where to put my space, I'm trying to make sure that I have a nice marriage of light and darks around. Because again, this ball does not exist in the factual universe. So what I had was a lot of examples of balls with reflections shining in various types of light environments to go, what do these things do when they're exposed to certain things? And that's what helped me create that look. That's how you paint something that isn't real and that you're not going to have a reference for. Well, some artists, what they might do is they might actually stage this whole scene for a photograph for reference. That would be another option. But I did not do that. I just did a lot of research and sketches. So I have that in. I'll let that settle a bit. You can come with a little of your ochre. You mentioned this earlier, and a little of your white. It's a different sort of value or feel, and add a bit of white. I'm doing here and there.
Just on those little clouds that are.
Could be clouds, could be just how the balls get, you know what I mean? It's like, but the ball does this thing. They all do this thing. A little bit right here. So when that's all in, what's really great is you can come back with your dark color again, which is your purple and blue and brown and even a little green, which is our dark, dark color. If you're having trouble getting this dark color, you can add some black to your mix, okay? Don't feel like you can't.
All right.
You're not trapped. You're just trying to create this deep value. That's what's going to make everything seem like it's reflecting. Now I'm going to come and smooth this out and make this clean on the edge. I'm going to tap in a little of the darkness into, not too much forward, but see how it's starting to blend? That's how I'm blending it in, is making sure that I've got a nice deep edge, deep as I can make it without just painting it jet black. And softening the transition between the reflection that I'm seeing and the ball. It will not look like a reflection until you put in the highlights. Just so you know. You're in the middle of it and you're like having a total panic attack. It doesn't look like a reflection until you put in the highlights. Now while I'm here, I'm going to just go ahead and scallop my top. Because, you know, why not? I've got it. Might even come and add a couple dark values. Here, you know, I've got to do them anyways. then back to my work of making sure this has a nice smooth space, that this edge is sort of woven. See how we just weave the paint in and out? And much like it's camouflage, we're avoiding these patterns, and that's what creates that illusion. Just tapping it in, softening it, tapping it in. I feel like I went a little too far up at the bottom, so I'm going to grab my green and brown, and I'm going to just tap this down a little bit too, but not too much. In a place that you feel like you lost something, you can put it back. You don't have to stress on that. Now rinse out really, 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 really well. And I'm gonna have fun with the reflections, but only after I've sipped some coffee, because the reflections are the jammy jam. So right now, it's kind of like a dark glowing sphere in a sky. Yeah.
But it's nice. It's got a lovely vignette inside it.
It has a lovely vignette. If you didn't get any further, no one's going to complain. Nobody's going to yell at you. But if you come and load your brush with your white, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly white at first, because we still want that white highlight. So this has got a little yellow and blue in it. And I don't mind, because I'm trying to create the highlights. So the first one I'm going to create, I'm going to make a little stroke right there. And then next I'm going to make a little line, stroke, and a dot. And maybe a dot, dot. I'll make this one longer. Come down here a bit. Dash dots. Dash dot, dash dot. Here I might do some more. I might be like, oh, there's a little bit, and then a little, and then the line breaks, and then that's stronger here. See how it's starting to immediately pop as reflections? It's crazy. I very much like to add these to this, because it just does so much. See how it's going?
Yeah.
When we back out, can we see it suddenly now as a very reflective little ball? Dot, dot, dot. So it's a combination of these long kind of reflections broken by little dots of light where something is maybe differently reflected, different focal light. So you want to make sure that you do that as well. Once you have those reflections in, rinse out. And the nice thing, if they are off-white, then you can come back with some just white pigment loaded pretty heavily on your brush like this. And create very white highlights, if that makes sense.
Totally does.
Where there's a hot spot on some of your highlights. All right, sippy sippy, take a look at that, and then we're going to put the top in, and then we sign it, and we're done. How are we doing? Oh, suddenly it's shiny.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It just came together. It's almost ready to go.
It just came together.
So, oh, you do your little goldy thing part on the top too.
Mm-hmm.
Little gold part.
I got to do the gold part.
The gold part.
The gold part. So I'll put out a smidge of black wherever I put it. Where did I put it? There it is. I got my purple. Got my brown. Smidge of black. All right. So I'm going to take a smidge of my purple over. You need to. And add a smidge of black to it. And it's going to be kind of a brownish gold color. This is pretty dark, so I'm going to come right here and I'm going to pull this down right here. And I'm going to come around here and pull this straight down. Should be about one shade lighter than the bulb. Around here, and again, pull it sort of down. And now I'm going to get right into my yellow. Loading up my yellow, but my brush is dirty. And I come here. And pull down a couple downward reflections. Right here, this one's pretty good. I do a little curve here and pull the metal down like that. And now, load up my brush with what I've got and maybe come in the center of this and add just that bit of highlight. Now is a good time to just get, you can tint your black with the gold, but you want it to be pretty black. I'm going to come on this back side and add a couple downward dark reflections there. Deepen that. You can even just make just a few of these dark shadows. It's nice to have a smidge of this that goes across. And then some that pulls down. Might even do the inside edge of that. Once I have that, I'm going to get a little of my ochre over into my white. I'm going to really lighten it up a lot. Over there. Tap, tap, tap right there. Pull it down, across. And then go ahead and load up. Make sure that you've got just a smidge of this. A couple places, and then on your rope. And then the last one I personally like to do is I actually like to make a kind of a sky blue reflection. It's very light with the white. And add a little of that. And a pull down. Can you see that? So it's a little bit like the metal is still seeing some of that. Little one right there. So there's sort of a dark line and a light line. How's that looking? I can't see. Nod backwards. Shall we go big? Let me see. Are you there, babe?
I am.
Okay.
I'm over here reading and chatting on some technical the Skype.
Technical Skype
the
data?
chat here.
Oh, okay.
They were just asking what's going on.
So I just kind of like accentuated the fact that the ball would have that deep. And let's look at it big. Yep. It looks metallic, shiny, all the things it's supposed to be. It tells the story. And now you know what you get to do?
What's that?
Sign your painting.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Put your little mark on the back.
So I looked at this a long time when deciding how to sign it, because if I plot my signature right here, where artists traditionally want to put it in the lower right, just to put it in the lower right, it then creates an object I have to consider in all this lovely negative space. And by leaving all this, and what I mean by negative space is that there's just background there. If you look at it, there's two shapes here. There's the positive space where we have a ball and we have this tree, but there's also this incredible negative space that comes in and out and weaves through all these things, right? And that peacefulness really puts our eyes on our couple. So to not interfere with that, I'm going to turn my canvas on the side.
The side. On
the side, like you do. I'm going to get my little signing brush. I'm going to get a number 3/0 TheArtSherpa brush, but any little tiny detail brush you have will be just fine. I get a little green and maybe a little yellow. I'm going to get right into my fluid paint, and I'm going to create a light color that sort of goes in that space on my brush, but that's light enough for me to see, which is what I'm using the white. So I've got it turned on its side here, and I've got it. I want to make sure that, you know, the frame, which is going to come over about 1/4 of an inch, isn't going to take away my signature. So I'm going to put it right here.
You tricked me. I thought I was going to you were going to put it on the bottom.
Nope.
It's all sneaky.
It in here.
You got it all. It looks nice there.
I mean, it's here. If somebody was looking for it, they could find it, but it's not now, if you noticed. And I could, I mean, if I...
No, I think it looks great.
Anything that you put here, you're going to see it there.
Yeah.
So it's all good. You sign it any way you want. That's just my 2 cents on how I created it and why I signed it where I did. And I hope you guys really loved it. It's going to be a little crazy here for a while because clearly we need to start changing some equipment out. So scheduling, I don't know. Just watch the website, watch the channel for updates. We will try to let you know in the Facebook groups and on the ArtSherpa page, Twitter, everywhere we are. We'll try to let you guys know what's going on. Share your paintings with us. Happy holidays. May you all be reunited with the people that you love. And we want to see you at the Easel really soon. Bye-bye.